Patience.
Yeah,
Oh,
Patience. Oh Lord, you know what?
That's a wicked tune.
This is a wicked album. You know that's a wicked album.
And the concert was amazing. I got the t-shirt.
Yeah, you have got the t-shirt.
And you
and
bought
I've
the
got the CD.
CD.
We need to high five on that one.
Oh man.
I mean, in
I
tune,
wouldn't even
in
communicate
tune.
that,
No.
wicked.
That's what I like, kind of in tune. But you know what I have to say? Definitely that album is an inspirational album.
Oh,
I'm
man,
sorry,
they should play that every
lyrically.
day for Black History Month. When I went to that concert, I felt so powerful. I felt
Listen,
like
so did I. And the fact that it's called Distant Relatives, yeah? Meaning we're family, you know that.
Everybody,
We're family.
human beings, full stop.
Listen, what can I say? We've been looking up
Role model.
role models. We've looked it up just as the definition that's out there. And the term role model generally means any person who serves as an example whose behaviour is emulated by others. I'm not going to read the rest because I think that kind of encapsulates
cuts
it. But you know what I find interesting? Actually, then we've got whose behaviour is emulated by others. Now then, obviously everyone's entitled to have their own role models because it's about
Get deep, because I know you've got a list there. Let's go through it.
You know, we've got a list, but the first one is I work with some young people as young as 14. They found it difficult in the first instance to think of who a role model was, but the first person who they eventually got to was actually Rick Ross.
What? They call me Big Meech. Blah blah.
Every day I'm hustling.
Wow, Rick Ross.
Every day I'm hustling,
but you know what?
hustling.
You know what? In saying this, yeah, I'll say something about Rick Ross.
Okay, tell me.
I listen to his music, some of it, and I will say he is a good role model. And I'll tell you why. It's going to sound like crazy talk.
Tell me.
He used to be a correctional officer.
Yeah.
Yeah. Work in prisons. I don't know what a correctional, the full job description of what a correctional officer does. But in saying that, he recreated himself. He got fed up of his day job, and he completely changed his persona, and he became a rapper, multi-millionaire rapper, multi-million record-selling rapper, and he's created this whole persona. So I think it's fantastic. You know that.
You know what? When you strip it down like that.
Yeah, that's a great role model, man.
But all he is emulating is making paper.
But you know what? That's the American culture.
True.
That's the American culture, and that's how they live. You know, so for him to recreate his whole persona, and because obviously the stuff that he's talking about is strictly for entertainment purposes. So, you know, I think the youngsters need to recognize that what a lot of these rappers are talking about is entertainment. It's not for real.
Okay, so I think when we kind of talk about role models, and it kind of bounces with what we were talking about last week, is education.
Yes.
Is know what you're talking about.
You done that.
And know who you're talking about and who they actually are. So sometimes just doing a little biography or reading up a biography on that person, how they got to be where they are, I think is then kind of sums up the whole thing. Alright, so we've got Rick Ross, he was one of them.
Who else we got next?
We've got under footballers.
Okay.
Ian Wright.
Okay.
Was brought up in terms of the era, how he was kind of quite a rebel for his time, how he was kind of, I'm not really a football person, but how he was kind of pushing for that time.
And again, Ian Wright done fantastically well as a football player. I know in his early years, before he was a football player, he had a few problems in life, and again, turned around his life, made a fantastic.
What problems did Ian have?
You know, I don't even want to.
Okay, all right.
You know, he had a few problems in life in terms of not being the best boy in the class, so to speak.
Okay.
You with me?
Yeah.
So, and he turned to football. He played football for many years, and he was a great football player. And he's on TV, he's doing TV presenting and stuff like that. So, again, I definitely
credit to him.
That. Yeah, done that.
We've also got another one, but again, I'm not really into football, but I was called Banatelli.
Okay, I've never heard of him, but I've heard of him now. Well, it's the second time I've heard of him. We talked about him earlier on today.
Okay, so I don't know if he's Arsenal or Man U or one of these teams, but apparently he's come up from nothing.
So, may I ask you something? When they told you these are my role models, what was their reasoning behind saying I admire this person? Was it because of their football skills? Was it because of the paper they're making? Was it because of
Ian at the time? Well, with Ian Wright, and obviously I'm going to have to remember all the different ones that have been brought up, but Ian Wright, I think, because he was a rebel at the time, because we're talking 80s.
When they say a rebel, you mean in terms of on the pitch?
He was. I think he didn't succumb to conforming, because I think a black man in them days. It was a different kind of football was different. It was a different era. Different era. And I think Ian Wright stood by who he was.
Yeah.
And I think that was what was inspirational, because obviously in my head I remember John Barnes, them kind of people.
Yeah.
You know. So Ian Wright, I think for when he first came out, he stood strong.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Banatelli, I can't really tell you, but I know when we're talking about football today, there's bare different people in football teams now.
They're doing very well, these young guys.
And they're earning some big money.
Very, very well. But not everybody can play football. So I'm interested in who else you got on that list.
Okay. But I'd like to come back to, even when we're talking about the football, I'd like at some stage for us to come back to whether we think footballers should be getting paid what they're getting paid.
We can do. Let's do it now. Deal with it now.
No, I think we.
Okay,
that's a separate subject.
I was just taking my headphones.
Yeah. And man was gonna fight me.
Okay, go on, keep it moving.
All right, Gandhi. Gandhi was brought
excellent.
up. I think he's one of the only Asian people on my list for now. But for someone obviously who was peace, he was advocating peace. Can't really say much more than that, but you know, he wasn't turning a left cheek, right cheek. He was doing what he had to do. So kind of big up to Mr. Gandhi up in the place.
It's a good movie, actually. Ben Kingsley played a really good role.
Yeah, even Ben Kingsley is a good actor.
So if you haven't seen Gandhi, it's a great movie, and it will give. If you don't know who Gandhi is, Google him. Google him. You definitely got to Google him. He stood for a lot. And again, the movies. If you're not really into reading, watch the movie. You learn a lot from that.
Next on my list, I've got Michael Jackson, which I think, you know, is Michael Jackson's standard. Even when we were talking about James Brown, you know, there's some people who are cosmic, who are part of the DNA of music, that you can't create music without Michael Jackson having some kind of influence somewhere. So, I mean, this brother, we're talking 40 years of music. 40. I need to go find find some. I don't know if I've got any Michael Jackson with me.
I'll be very honest with you. With what you're saying, I know the trial is obviously on at the moment. I feel very sensitive with what you just mentioned, Michael Jackson, because I find the whole thing bizarre. I find it quite sad.
Bizarre?
The whole Michael Jackson thing, in terms of him just not being here. You know,
no, I feel you.
I find it really, really bizarre, and as you said, he contributed a lifetime of great music.
Before he passed,
yeah.
What were your feelings on Michael Jackson before he passed?
Can I be truthful with you?
Please do.
I didn't know him. I didn't know his life. What I knew was mostly, obviously, like everybody else, was in the newspapers. You know, obviously, he had stuff going on in his personal life. And the truth be told, I just don't know. I honestly do not know. And I think if I was to delve in most of these entertainers or most of anybody's lives, you will find things in there that we totally disagree with in most cases, and totally would want to really kind of shake them up about. But I just don't know, and I didn't have any. For me, it was just about his music, because as I said, I just didn't know the man. I didn't know his life. I didn't know his business or anything like that. And you know, with the papers and the media, I tell you something here. The amount of things that I've actually read in the paper in the last maybe 5 years, and a lot of it hasn't been true, and a lot of the stories have been retracted. I tend not to even listen to the news, to be truthful with you.
No, I hear that, and I think just before he passed, for me, and I'll be honest, I was thinking, this guy is a paedophile.
Really?
Sorry, I know I've just said it like that, but that was my personal
there's nothing
opinion.
wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with that, because he did have a court case, and they were talking about him telling kids to drink Jesus juice and all that type of crap. So, why are you laughing? This is serious.
No,
man.
I know.
Do you know what I mean?
It's
And
quite deep.
when you read that stuff, you know.
Yeah,
So how do you feel now?
Well, the thing is, this is the thing is that just before he passed, I was thinking, I don't know, this guy's a bit dodgy. He's got, there's obviously a lot of pain going on in his life. But when he passed, I was really quite touched, because I kind of had forgotten about the music.
Why? Why were you touched, considering that you thought you had these feelings towards him?
I don't know. I think I just been on my own emotional journey. But when I started seeing pure images of him as a young man growing
so the music
into
overrode.
The music, I think overrode it, and I was really touched.
You see,
I
that's
really,
why
really touched.
for me, when I'm watching the news and I'm seeing all these people talking about people, I cannot take it in, because the thing is, you can get so caught up in some of these people's lives, you don't even know whether half of these things are true.
No, and that's
and
for real.
We've got to remember, yeah, although his life was odd, very, very odd from what we saw, we've got to remember that you just don't bloody know. And he was, the case that he had was, he was vindicated of all charges. So I just don't know, mate.
But we're also, as an example, and even though this person isn't on this list, but I'm going to bring it up, and it comes back down to role models and influential figures. So on the one hand, we're looking at Michael Jackson, his music, that is what influenced us. His lifestyle now is a different play. I wouldn't mind even talking about someone like Tyson, yeah? Tyson, to me, I thought was an amazing boxer, amazing. But some people might question how he has lived his life.
Why?
Well, for one, whether or not you believe that he committed, I'll just put it as a sexual offence, but he was convicted of this and
Spent
did
time in jail too.
Yeah, when he was in the ring with
Holyfield, bit of his piece of his ear.
Bit of a piece of man's ear.
You know what? But I tell you something. I saw the Tyson documentary.